The Matthew Dark Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, praise God and welcome in. So good to be with you. And one of my favorite topics, we got a wonderful guest to discuss it. But the second Trump term was one of the themes and exciting themes of it was MAHA, Make America Healthy Again. And we had RFK Jr. coming in, a bulldog going after environmental pollutions, those injured by toxins that have been just sort of placed on the American people. It's coming from our food, our air, our soil. We're heavy duty pesticides. And so it was kind of a call to action. Get America healthy again and start making the choices that can lead you and your family to long-term sustainable health. I don't think anybody, if they're being honest with themselves, would view America as a healthy country, but there's plenty of solution behind that change. And so we're so glad to have Dr. Michael Gaeta, the Gaeta Institute, dear friend of the show. Sir, I want to welcome you in and thank you so much for doing this. I want to just kind of give us your thoughts so far on the Make America Healthy Again agenda. How are we doing? How are you seeing the change in the culture? I mean, I know we've definitely seen folks start to have a little shift in the mentality. That's food, that's not food. This is good for you, this is not. Kind of give us an overtake so far on this agenda where you're seeing some action happening, because we got to get America, we need to lose weight. We need to get off of so many prescription drugs. Of course, the Gaeta Institute, nature first, drugs last. And we can move people in that direction if they're open-minded, willing, and have the tools to do so. Welcome in, sir. So how do you make it so far? Are we getting healthier as Americans, or what do you think?
I think so, Matthew. It's so good to be back with you again, my friend.
Excellent.
And I think there's been wonderful changes. I think MAHA is happening. Bobby promised measurable improvements in health metrics in 2 years and major transformation within 4. And I think we're seeing that, at least on the input side, in terms of cleaning up ingredients in foods. And so I'm very happy for all of that. And like many of us in the health freedom movement, we're a little disappointed that the COVID shots are still available. Yes. They haven't been recalled. So, and other things. My impression is, and I said this many times, I think this is what Bobby wants to do here, and I think this is what he's being allowed to do, which is not quite that by whoever, the powers that be, Susie Wiley or, whoever, I don't really know. But at the end of the day, if we're looking at, are we better off? Definitely yes. I think there's been a lot of positive changes with school food and exercise programs and getting chemicals and colorings and all kinds of terrible stuff out of the food. And, there's a lot more to do. My impression is I think they're more comfortable with him messing with food than vaccines.
Yes.
And chemtrails.
Right.
So, that's I just think, that's how it is. He promised that if he was elected president during his campaign, he would stop the chemtrails on day 1.
Yes.
But anyway, that we have a different scenario now. So overall, I'm very pleased. And of course, things are so corrupt, we want more. But right. There's been a lot of progress.
So that's good. I mean, that's encouraging. That's hopeful. And I would feel the same, that we are at least making moves in the right direction. The powers that be that you described, they are certainly a power, because the money that's involved with big pharma, big ag, and these industries, they're not going to go quietly now that we're telling them you're hurting people. And I think that's really where people need to come. I mean, if we're recognizing, listen, okay, I think there's a fear of thinking, would these companies intentionally hurt us to sell their product? And I think that's a scary topic to go into.
Yes.
We know about red dye number 40, pesticides on our food, things like that. I'm wanting people to look at it not so much as, you need to be scared of these people or like succumb to these people, but just internally making the decisions. This is good for your body. This is not. And I guess it's sort of so fundamental. We've become so entrenched in the fast food, the grab and go, what tastes good, feels good. We know about ingredients in America just look different than around the world. So we need a presence in Washington to continue to march forward. And then the people coming along. What I notice when we come across individuals that have a healthcare condition, autoimmune, obesity, blood pressure,
Yep.
cholesterol, all these things. A lot of this is new information to them. The food, the inputs, the microbiome. This is, I mean,
Yep.
we're dealing with, giving the benefit of the doubt. They have not heard this information
That's
really
right.
ever, right?
That's right.
And you're just
That's
wondering,
true.
well, what doctor are they seeing that is not aware of the dietary stuff? The Gaeta Institute, of course, is treating patients, training practitioners, and the mindset of nature first, drugs last. It absolutely matters what you put into your mouth, right? And then it absolutely matters then the lifestyle that you want to leave if your goal is long-term sustainable health. So we want to support what you're doing, of course, because if it was to flip, the traditional doctor is now a functional, a patient first.
Yeah.
That's the kind of organic change we need. And so we just want to continue to encourage people. Jesus Christ says, deny yourself and follow me. And one of those
Mm.
denials of the self is, okay, that looks good, but that's not food. This would be super
Mm.
convenient, but I know that's going to hurt my body. So we're just
Yeah.
educating. There's no hard feelings, but we do have to get you moving in the right direction. Our children are obese, they're sick, they're autoimmune, they have behavior. I mean, it's all over the place. So it's great that
Yeah.
he's there, sort of holding the candle for us, society catching up. I
Yep.
think we're probably going to be missing the 4 year where we can look at the two turnaround, because I'm looking at things like chronic disease,
Yep.
obesity, chronic medication use. And
That's right.
so, in your practice, do you find people converting over? Meaning, I was a traditional pill popping patient and now I've seen the light, I'm coming in. Tell us a little
Yeah.
bit about that experience, because that's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. Accepting the Lord Jesus Christ, one, and then, hey,
Yes.
I don't want any more of this poisonous stuff. Can you help me get right? Give us a little
Right.
taste of an experience if you've had, a patient kind of coming from one side to the other.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well, a lot of folks come in, most folks come in by referral from other patients. So they're kind of
Yeah.
know, they kind of want this already.
Mm-hmm.
There are some folks who'll come in because their wife dragged them in and, the
Yes.
wanting to them to get healthy. You've seen that, in your
Yes.
clinic as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, there was a patient came in. He had a massive heart attack. His name was Gary, and it almost killed him. He had marginal function and of his heart. His ejection fraction was like in single digits, perhaps. I don't
Jeez.
know. This is a while ago. It was very, very low. Should be about 60%. So his heart output was very low. He had a massive heart attack, almost killed him. Doctors gave him 1 to 2 months to live, and that was 6 weeks before he came in.
Jeez.
So, long story short, he 6 months later he was starting hiking and mountain
Mm.
biking, and the following year he was, doing climbing in Moab, Utah, and things like that.
Jeez.
But the thing that he said was, he said, and this is such a deep sign of healing, Matthew, is when a
Mm.
patient comes in and can bless their adversity.
Yes.
And he said that heart attack, which almost killed me, was the best thing that could happen to me.
Yeah.
And when you can have that attitude, because he said I was eating junk food all day, he was in sales, and he was, McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's was his three meals, or three food groups. And, he was in a very toxic relationship, hated his job, wasn't exercising, and he changed all of that. He says, I almost died. Let me make a life that I want to live.
Mm.
And he changed everything, changed his diet, got a better relationship, better job, better food, started exercising. And it was a big shift for him. So it was a couple of years later, the patient who referred him said, Gary is, again, mountain biking in Moab and wanted me to send his regards. So I think people, so I don't have a random sample of the population.
Yeah.
Usually folks will see folks like me or your clinic when they're already oriented a little bit into, hey, I don't want to be on drugs forever. They're just managing symptoms as their natural alternative, or this isn't working. I've seen 10 specialists and on the medical side. So I think it's a very positive thing. And just to head back to the Bobby question,
Yeah.
there's been some, again, these are input changes. We don't have measurable outputs that I've seen. Maybe there
Mm-hmm.
have been, but
Right.
getting, sugar out of the SNAP program and the new dietary guidelines,
Yes.
which are very fat and protein friendly, not avoiding cholesterol, that scam. That's pretty big, and limiting pesticides, getting the artificial colors out, and just at least bringing into the public view vaccines, fluoride. What I don't know, Matt, do you know? I know Bobby announced that we were going to change the vaccine schedule to the European size,
Yeah,
which is about two-thirds fewer vaccines. I don't know if that actually happened or if
right.
that was something that got reversed. I'm
I
not
don't have
sure.
any. I don't believe that that took place.
Hmm.
That is what we're seeking. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
great debate though, because it's like, does the survival of the human race depend on vaccines? I've asked many doctors that, and I just can't get a
Right.
yes. It is. We would be
Right.
extinct, but for vaccines. And so the premise and the size of the vaccine schedule has just grown so large, and then we know
Yes.
about the lack of placebo testing and the lack of safety regard on this. And so it's a sensitive subject, though, because as we talk about vaccines, in fact, we did some reporting about a month ago on the flu mRNA vaccine that's set to come out this
Right.
fall. And
That's
so we get these
crazy.
kind of, it is because we get these kind of conflicting things. It just shows that his role, Bobby's role in this is this size. And then the people that control is
No.
this big, massive, the sun
Right.
that's just saying,
Right.
you will stay in this little box,
Right.
because people get very upset about their vaccines. They get very upset about their food, meaning they kind of
Yes.
position themselves to where, you know, I'm aligned, and it doesn't have to be like this. I'm aligned with the vaccines. That's great. You can believe in vaccines, and then you can believe in vaccines for your family and yourself. And this cookie cutter blanket, though, has really caused division amongst the population. We saw it come out in COVID-19, Wuhan 19, the virus that they made in a lab in North Carolina, then shipped to China, and then
Yes.
released to the world. That is still a hot button topic. I mean, some of our greatest engagements online have to do with their mentioning that the COVID shot was maybe not as safe and effective as they think. And people will rush to the defense of that vaccine.
Yep.
We put out some stuff on red dye number 40 that is a neurological toxin and that is
Totally.
affecting behavior. And they race to defend red dye number 40. What do you think
Mm.
is going on in the psyche of a patient in which, hey, we're not saying every vaccine is meant to kill you. We're not saying every food you eat is meant to kill you. But don't you think we should step back and say, well, hold on, is this still being checked and balanced all the way through? What is it about that being so um, deep inside of a person that they would be, lash out and defend vaccines? And they couldn't possibly defend the vaccines because we know
Mm.
people just go to VAERS. We know people have been injured, not everybody,
Yep.
but some people have been injured.
A
Why do you
lot.
think they're so hostile about vaccines, those that are in favor of?
Well, that's a great question, Matt. I think it's two things. One is some folks have an innate trust in the medical system. And the second thing is some people have an innate hatred for all things associated
Right.
with Donald Trump. Bobby has gotten, he's getting lumped together. So the TDS crowd
Mm.
hates Bobby just because he's there,
Yes. Yeah.
right? They're not really thinking too much. And so, yeah, and I just checked on it. It looks like, yeah, the news is the U.S. childhood vaccine schedule was officially reduced in January, aligning it with Denmark's minimalist
Oh, great.
model rather than a broad European average. So, universal recommendations from 18 diseases to 11, and so that downgrade.
That's progress.
It's all progress. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all progress. So that's a good thing. So I think those are the two reasons. You have and look, I live in Boulder. We have a very compliant, obedient, do as you're told, trust the government, trust
Yes.
medicine, kind of population here. And, it's just a mindset. My doctor said, the CDC said, and thankfully CDC said is starting to get a little more respectable. But it's a pretty deeply ingrained thing. And really, I was testifying at the Colorado State Capitol on vaccine mandates, and I spoke to a representative. So this is I forgot what district he was from, but he was
Yeah.
in the Colorado legislature. And I love this guy. I forgot his name, but he said, "Well, Mike, it turns out there's two kinds of people. One kind of people thinks that they know how best to live their own lives, and other people think that the government knows best
Yes.
how they should live their own lives." And that I hadn't really thought of it that way, but that stuck with me. And I think there's a lot of truth to that.
I think that's a great highlight because that's what we're finding is that the government said so. And I'm in. And I think there's tremendous fear for
Right.
that person. And I
Right.
almost would bet you dollar to dollar that person is not walking with the Lord Jesus Christ, that is also
Well,
dependent on
right.
the government, right? So we've replaced a higher
Right.
power with the
Right.
government. And so when I
Yes.
attack your government, like you're attacking my God, that's going to cause
Right.
some pushback from me. And so we
That's for
have to
sure.
break that because
Good point.
believe it or not, liberals are our government is not all day 24/7 fighting for your best interests. We have to come to that conclusion,
That's an
right? That there's no
understatement. Yeah.
way. We're blue collar people. We're, health concerns are flying at us everywhere. I can promise
Yes.
that your legislatures, your elected officials are not consumed by that thought. Is this person's child being raised as healthy as possible? We need to understand that the government has a role when it comes to your family's longevity. That's your decision. That's your choice. And
Yes.
you have to find your facts. And so we want to
That's
come
right.
at this issue not with we're not attacking, see, you did a vaccine and you hurt your kid, you're a bad
Right.
person.
Yeah.
We're just basically saying, hey, this may not be a cookie cutter solution for all people. And if you don't believe us, I'd like you to meet a vaccine injured child. And they exist
Mm.
in the millions. And
Yep.
it's a major problem. It's a trauma for the family. If you have a now autistic child or a nonverbal child or a child
Mm.
with severe behavioral, I mean, I see these families and it's not easy. Okay. So you shouldn't be
Yes.
shaming them because they took a vaccine, they were injured. We're just asking for choice to come back in America. Vaccines have kind of carved themselves out as you've got a choice. You can do anything you want in America, but you must take these vaccines. And so it's made it
Right.
very troubling. Parents getting kicked out of schools or daycares because they're not willing to vaccinate. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
hold on a second. If all the other kids are vaccinated and they're safe and effective, why on earth does my kid need it too? We're willing to
Yes.
take the risk. Okay. So
That's
there's a boldness that came out of COVID for so many moms I saw
right.
where we're looking at things differently. The medicines, the food, the LGBTQ, the trans stuff that we saw going on, it opened
Right.
eyes. And we want to
And
continue
that's
to open those eyes.
right. And that was a MAHA win too.
Yes.
That was a thing, so the HHS, guidance that there's two genders, was big. But Matt, I just want to underline something you said there. It's so
Yeah.
significant. When you don't have a faith in God or a higher power, or whatever you want to call it, cosmic being, then there's a void, right? That
Yeah.
gets filled with something else that
Yes.
becomes your highest source of truth.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, a lot of folks that's become the government has become, the highest authority in their life. Whereas, people of faiths, as we call, they have a very clear, and so if the government, if the government's the highest authority in your life, you got some
Oh,
big problems. And
oh,
so I think that's, and again, it comes down to the family. It comes down to, um, parents leading, providing leadership. And I, put a lot of this on men.
yes.
We need to provide leadership, for our families and our children and not shy away from that. And the restoration and this is happening. We saw this with the last election with Turning Point USA, Students for Liberty. A lot of young people are coming around to a more self responsibility, individual freedom, faith perspective. Certainly we have a bunch of young people who are going full commie right now.
Yes.
But I'm very hopeful that that I don't think we can put the genie back in the bottle, so to speak. I think this whole shift is happening towards natural health, towards biological reality, towards faith in God. Things that were not partisan issues. I always
Right.
feel it always seems strange to me. Like I put this hat on in
Right.
Boulder, and it's like I
Right.
get I get thumbs up from some people, and I get nasty looks from
Right.
the woke Karens. But why is
Right.
health, how did health get become political? And I think it's
Exactly.
because of this, kind of pervasive TDS, and at least a portion of the population where now health is associated
It's crazy.
with, with the Trump administration somehow, and I think it was Newsweek or The Atlantic, said that fitness is a right wing thing. Like what? Like exercise is a right wing,
Yes,
what? How did health get
exactly.
politicized? But anyway, I want to say I'm very hopeful, and as you and I have said many times here on the show, God wins
Yes.
in the end, and there's a lot of this is the power greater than any than whoever's running the vaccines and the drug industry. There's a power beyond this world, which is holding it all and moving it forward towards freedom because I think spirit is innately free, and as that spirit of awakening is happening, or that spirit is awakening, then that characteristic of it is freedom, and that is so I'm very hopeful.
Very well said. Yeah, right. Health is universal, nonpartisan, good
Right?
for all of us, right? It
Yes.
is an interesting, and this is where that cognitive dissonance really comes into, because
Yeah.
think about it. Donald Trump
Yes.
was the president that oversaw the COVID shot,
Yeah.
Operation Warp Speed. It
That's
came
right.
from him.
Yep.
Many of the people, now, of course, his fans took it to 80% of Americans took a COVID, at least one COVID shot
Yes.
once it was released. But you think about the Democrat, the liberal who hates Donald Trump, they're
Right.
also simultaneously defending the COVID-19 shot. That
Yes.
is a very odd thing because to give him credit for that, because they considered it a life saving medication. Well,
I
whose
hadn't thought of
leadership
that.
did it
That's a
come under?
great point.
I mean, it's so
That's a
bizarre.
great point.
And then, but then his fans are against it. And if you remember Donald Trump in the second term or second
Yes.
term, the election, he couldn't mention the vaccine. He would get booed at rallies by
He
his own
got booed
fans
all
by
the
talking
time.
about it. And he
Yep.
stopped talking about it. So we're in
He
this
did.
weird thing where
He did.
we still defend big pharma, the institution, but yet somehow the person that oversaw it is Satan, and we can't give him credit
Yeah.
for it because they should all be Donald Trump fans. If it saved mankind, every Democrat should be sitting, at least he saved our life, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
It's a
Right.
bizarre thing, but it just shows because it's rooted in nothing. It's not
Yes.
rooted in a higher power. We're all over the place. Dr. Fauci, and Dr. Fauci's now coming back up again. He's going to have some heat on
Yep.
him.
Yep.
Also, a very hot button topic because the standard Democrat liberal during COVID saw Dr. Fauci as the savior. He
Oh
was the
yeah.
man, right?
Absolutely.
And he
100%.
lied to us. We now know. I mean,
Repeatedly. Under
it's
oath.
under. He's perjured himself. Many of these officials have
Repeatedly.
perjured themselves. Kash Patel's the same. Many of these people have just spoken lies, and we're supposed to say, "Well, that's okay," even though you and I go to jail for lying to Congress.
Yes.
That is a
Yes.
problem. But he is looked at as this sort of folklore person, the man who saved the world, but he lied to us. He made a ton of
Mhm.
money off of us. Don't you think accountability? This is what I've always thought. Okay, whatever, whether it's a bad Republican or a bad Democrat, don't
Yep.
we have to see these people that were in major positions of power that
Yep.
let us down, that lied, betrayed? Don't we have to see accountability at some point on this
Well,
stuff? Or what are we supposed to? Oh, another one we didn't deal with 9/11. We didn't deal with the 2020 election. We didn't deal with
right.
COVID. And we just move on to the next thing without
Yep.
accountability. Doesn't that have to get right at some point soon? Or is just this bigger and nastier cycle of betrayal of
Yeah.
the American people?
Well, thank you, Matt. Yeah, you opened up an important can of worms there, and I think those of us who are more freedom oriented, this has been one of the biggest bugaboos or
Yeah.
bones of contention or concerns at the very least, if not absolute disappointment in the administration, is that stuff comes to light and there's no accountability.
Yes.
Stuff is revealed. People want their perp walk and their
Yes.
hearings and their prosecutions and, just like basic legal justice, you broke the law. There are consequences for that, right? I speed, I might get a speeding ticket, right? So
Yes.
just basic accountability. This
Right.
hasn't really happened from, as you said, to 9/11 to Epstein to
Yes.
the list is pretty long.
Yes.
To Fauci, to Hillary.
Yes.
There's some talk about Obama. some accountability there. But, it just seems to be a lot of show without a lot of meat on the bones. And
Yes.
so, I think there's a lot of healing that needs to happen there.
Right.
There does need to be accountability. Just as Trump said, if I'm elected, there's not going to be retribution, but there will be accountability if you
Yes.
broke the law. Great. What like has
Start now.
we're still
Yeah.
waiting,
Yeah. Exactly.
for Jack Smith to be disbarred,
Hmm.
for example, for violating, every ethical legal standard. So, that is a concern. And Bobby had even suggested, and I think this was during his campaign, he said there was a process in South Africa after apartheid where there was a public hearing. It was without consequences, but it was with admission. So basically, the process, he said, if I get elected, we're going to do something like this. We need a national healing.
Yeah.
There was all this illegal dark stuff that happened with COVID, for example, and the rule is if you voluntarily come forward in these public hearings, you will not face any
Yes.
consequence if you voluntarily and just admit it. And
Right.
then if you don't, we may have to drag you in and you face criminal prosecution.
Yes.
And he said it was amazing healing thing. Obviously more could have been done, I guess, but in South Africa they had this whole like apartheid reckoning of these dudes who did terrible atrocities, and they had this process that was like healing the consciousness, the soul of the country, where people who did wrong things had a chance to say, this was wrong and I did this. So anyway, I hope something happens.
I'm not sure we have enough humility in this country for something like that. I'm
Yeah,
sitting at our officials and our institution swamp
yeah,
creatures, and I
right.
don't think they think they've ever done a wrong thing ever because in their mind, it's well, we're
Yes,
protecting this power
yes,
structure, the money that's flowing.
that's right.
I guess that's an interesting concept. Would it satisfy the American person that knows
Well,
corruption? Just
right.
admit you did wrong and do it in front of everybody. You don't have to go to jail.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that would satisfy a lot of people,
There'd
right?
be something. Like right now,
Yeah,
we got nothing. We
right.
we
It was
have
nothing.
a bunch of folks who've done some terrible things without consequence, and that flips the injustice switch in
Yeah,
people, and the faith in institutions, faith in, is it depends on that. Like we
yeah,
have to have some trust and faith that if somebody does something wrong, that breaks the law, and it causes harm, that there will be at least some accountability for that. And, I think that's a national wound,
yeah,
that I don't know if that's going to get healed. It may have to be just an internal thing. I don't know. But I do know, and I just had, James Thorpe was on the show a couple of days
yes,
ago, and he said, it's up to us.
yeah,
No one's coming to save us. Even Donald Trump, who's done all
right.
these wonderful things, and there's definitely some swampy influence there.
Yes,
With our Alfred Bourla, the
yes,
CEO of Pfizer,
yes,
being celebrated in the Oval Office. That was kind of a dark moment,
yeah,
and the list goes on. But he said it's up to us. He said Trump has done a lot of good things, and at the end of the day, we can't rely on government to sort things out. We need
yeah,
each other, and we need, again, as you say all the time, faith, family, and freedom. We need our faith in God, our connection to each other, and our courageous willingness to make our world, our immediate sphere of influence, to bring order to that.
yes. That's well said. It is an inside job. I think it's clear we're not going to vote our
Yep.
way out of any of this stuff. We can only say limit the
Right.
damage. And we know for a fact, and as disappointed in Donald Trump as I certainly am, because we demanded the swamp be drained.
Yep.
We needed deportations. We needed justice on the Epstein files, and we're not
Yep.
going to get any of that. But we do have, something that we could maybe work off of. We know it would have been far worse with any Democrat person. They would have. You'd
Oh,
still have an
there'd be
open
no
border and
country.
20 million. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
done.
no country left.
Okay.
Country's
So you have no
over.
country left with the Democrats, and that's why I guess the
Yeah.
disappointment in Donald Trump is severe because we have November coming.
Yep.
And he has set the stage for Republicans to really get beat up, conservatives to really get beat up, because we've got three major issues that he's going to need to bring closure to sooner than later. Because,
Yep.
of course, we have the Epstein files. This is the
Yep.
greatest cover up in American history.
Totally.
Nobody is going to debate that because you can't, right? There's nothing like it. We needed deportations. We had 20 million new people come through over the Joe Biden era.
Yep.
We've only deported 300,000 so far. That's just not going to work
Hmm.
mathematically. Too low, right? And they've stopped reporting. This has been an area of contention because they've stopped reporting the border numbers. I mean, there's 94% closure. We're not getting any new people, that's for sure. So we commend the enforcement at the border. Our deportations, they screwed up with that Venezuelan guy and ICE in Minneapolis.
Yes.
It's kind of been, okay, let's don't touch deportations right now because it got them in a lot of messy water, and it gave the left ammunition when they killed the people in Minnesota. And it was a bad look. But we have then Iran as well. So we have costs going up. So our prayer for Donald Trump is, let's get these issues back to America ASAP. What do the people want in America? Well, they want justice on Epstein. They want inflation dealt with. I mean, we've got 420 gas again on top of already inflated cost of living. Our young people can't buy a home.
Yeah.
We have a stagnant economy and really hard to break through. We've got to get that back down because you're 20 somethings, you're 30 somethings.
Yep.
I saw this
stat the
other day.
Issue. Yep.
It is. The average first time home buyer right now is 38 years old, which means he's not starting a family till too late in life. The savings are going to be behind. We've got to bring some focus back there. So we're still prayerful, because if we lose in November, my fear is this: nothing else gets accomplished. Nothing else moves forward. We're not going to have the support. And then, for Donald Trump, it's impeachment. I know for a fact if House control, he's impeached, which means we shut down anything he wants to do. Now we're back to the Russia. And, I want to give Republicans the benefit of the doubt that they're just nicer people than Democrats, and that's why they don't go after political enemies and stuff.
Yeah,
but
nice will get you killed these days.
Exactly. You have to deal with these people. It's like they're an enemy in your home. You kill them or they kill you. What do you pick? And we had to get those bad players out. We're not doing that. So we have a lot on the line for November. And in our state in particular, right? Colorado governor, this ultra blue legislature that we have here.
Yeah.
Do you feel like the conservative side, now Democrats, the losers are always rallying and motivated, right? They have something to fight for.
Yeah.
Conservatives, I worry that the enthusiasm is waning and wearing off. Say from before 2024, you and I spoke. I mean, I would have walked over broken glass to get Donald Trump elected. I don't have that same fight in me this time around. How do you see the elections playing out here in the fall to sustain? Remember, we control the House, the Senate, and the White House. That should be enough ammunition to really make change. We haven't seen that change. Can we keep it or grow it in November?
Well, the projections are positive. And that Republicans will pick up seats, which even if it's a small gain, which is unusual. In midterms, usually the party that won loses seats. Like in the last time, it was this enormous shift of dozens and dozens of seats shifted towards the Democrats in Trump's first term in the midterms. So to even break even is remarkable. To pick up seats would be almost unprecedented. And the current projections are that that's what will happen. And it's not necessarily what the Republicans have done. Democrats are sort of eating themselves right now because that party is getting fractured, and they have the same courage problem. You have traditional liberals that aren't left of Mao, like full communist, who don't want that. Even here in Camirado, Polis said, we will not lose, the state will not be destroyed by socialism. Within days, 90% of his own party rejected him in some way. I forgot the details, but his approval rating is like 10% right now in his own party because he took a stand remarkably against socialism. And so socialism is dividing the Democrat Party, just like all the woke issues did
Yes.
in
Yes.
2024. It divided that party and unified the Republicans because they're unified against socialism. The Democrats are now split because the socialists are taking over the young, energetic, passionate, useful idiots,
Yes.
as the Soviet communists would refer to them. This is Mao's Red Guard. These were
Mhm.
young people who, did a lot of the atrocities against the more, moderate, reasonable folks, including their own professors. So yeah, we have a massive. I wouldn't say it's massive. It's still a very small movement, but it's growing. And there's a lot of reasons for this. It's the college indoctrination, it's the high school and grade school indoctrination, it's the affordability issue. That's a real thing that you pointed out,
Mhm.
and they're casting about for something to save them, and they've been taught that they're victims. So anyway, to answer your question, I am hopeful about November. It's not a slam dunk because there's a lot of momentum from the communists right now, which
Yeah.
is remarkable to even say. But that is a real thing, and it may turn out to be a good thing. We
Yeah.
have moderate liberals like even Bill Maher and others who are like, I think I'm going to vote for J.D. Vance, or I
Yeah.
think I'm going to stop supporting Democrats. Fetterman, all of this.
Yes.
There's fractures within the party because they've gone so far, like left of Stalin, that some liberals are like, hey, wait a minute, I didn't sign up for this.
Yes.
I just want a big government. I don't want communism. So we'll see how it plays out. I agree with you. I think in the lions and scavengers model, the lions definitely need to wake up because the
Yes.
scavengers are on full steam right now with the communist movement.
It feels like the country's primed and set up for that third party, a legitimate third party. What you just described, and I think it's 100% correct, is you have traditional historical Democrats that like a lot of the stuff with the environment and
Yeah,
big
they're
government.
liberals.
And now they
Yeah,
have to sign up, though, for the trans, the open border, the
right.
DEI. And they're saying, okay, that's
Oh,
too
and
much.
full communism.
And full
Yeah,
communism, right? The
yeah,
right is also starting to say, well, hold on a second. You said no new wars. You said inflation. You said
yeah,
you'd release and get rid of the corruption. I mean,
right.
you really have kind of like a 25, 25, 25,
Yeah,
25 to where that
yeah,
middle is
yep.
going. Because, see, most Democrats are totally opposed to a sexual transition for a 5-year-old. They're totally
Oh,
opposed to
for
that.
sure.
They have
80%.
a,
Yeah. That's an
and then
80-20
and
issue.
then all the Republicans are against it. I mean, you
Yeah,
can't really be a Republican and pro trans, right? So they've sort of
yeah.
sectored that out. There's a big chunk in the middle, and Colorado is actually a great representation. It's a very high unaffiliated state in
Right.
which we have these two extreme. I mean, I wouldn't say the right in Colorado is very extreme, but certainly
No,
the left is, and
for
they've
sure.
been in control for a lot of years. It
Right.
feels like a no hope. How could we possibly win in
Yeah.
November in Colorado? But we simply must.
Colorado.
Feels like
Yeah.
we need a third party, though. A third. There's not a choice between
Yeah.
this and that, and I know
Yeah.
that's what Tucker Carlson and some of these new movements have said. Is that even possible in the United States that a third legitimate party could emerge and they're competing for seats all over? Is that possible?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think I get the idea, and it's certainly the European model, like
Mhm.
10, 20 different parties in many countries in Europe. I get it. And if they get 20%, that's amazing because there's 15 different parties.
Right.
I understand that allows for a diversity of viewpoint, but practically speaking, and this is almost what happened in New York with Mamdani and Curtis Sewa, that's my old hometown,
Yeah.
running as an independent, maybe kind of stealing the votes from Cuomo that allowed Mamdani to do that.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. He got 1 million votes.
Okay.
Mamdani, the communist, the Muslim communist, got 1 million votes. He's been a citizen for 8 years, and
Jesus.
so that didn't happen. But that sort of thing, when you take that step to third party, I get it because we want somebody that represents us. We don't want the lesser of two evils. I get it.
Right.
I'm with you on that. And I think it would be catastrophic
Yeah.
because in close races, and Kami Mamdani was not a close race.
Mhm.
He decimated both other opponents. And I did the math. If you added up all the Cuomo votes, all the Sila votes, it still wouldn't have been enough. And I was concerned that it would be, that Sila spoiled the race, so to speak.
Right.
So that's the risk you run, is
Right.
you drain votes. It's a 20-year project.
Yeah.
We don't have 20 years.
No.
Like we have communists not at the gate, they're in the house.
Yes.
And that's a big freaking problem. And so that I think it's warts and all is the approach right now. Republican Party, warts and all, is the best hope for the survival of the country. Because the communists they've stated they want to destroy Western civilization and all things associated with it, including the United States, including Israel, including Christianity, including you and me,
Yep.
straight white males,
Shut up, both of you.
The uber oppressor,
Yep.
right, of all humanity. This is Marxism. So they only know how to destroy stuff, and they have a lot of energy, a lot of youthful enthusiasm. It's exactly Mao's Red Guard.
Yep.
Exactly.
And plenty of money behind the movement to
Oh,
sustain it.
loads. Yeah,
Yeah.
Soros is dumping billions.
Yeah. It really is
So,
outrageous. We could get to this point in this country to where you would even view America like, I mean, it just still takes your breath away.
Yeah.
When you see the passion for something that is so clearly non-pro-human, pro-people.
For sure. If you look at the videos, I encourage your listeners to just go to YouTube and look up Mao's Red Guard. Just look at the videos. It's a different race. They're Chinese.
Yeah.
But they're identical, ultra violent, ultra enthusiastic. We're right, and if you don't agree with us, we're going to kill you. And they're all young people, wearing green and gray. You couldn't wear pink and blue because they did the gender androgynous thing in the Red Guard, the Mao's youth movement. He banned masculine and feminine attire. So he made the boys and the men and women, a lot of them were young, but in general, only could wear gray and blue because those were gender neutral colors. What's playing out, and again, 80 million people were killed under Mao's regime, and that's what they want to happen. And easily a billion, severe suffering. They didn't die, but they were really miserable. So, this is the days of courage. This is the time for folks who love America, warts and all. There's no perfect country on earth because it's made up of people, and people are I believe basically good, but basically flawed, right? We all have our flaws. And so anything we create is going to have flaws, including our country. So that's okay. The United States, as Lincoln said, is still the last best hope of Earth. And so this is the time for courage, to not be silent, and to speak vigorously for what we believe in, like freedom, for example. And we live in a great country, the best that's ever existed.
Yes.
And it's worth defending. And so, that's what I think is very important. I pray that this resolves in a nonviolent way. I really do. I'm not sure it's going to, but I don't know the future. But I do know that with God's help, a solution that I can't mentally figure out can happen.
And that's well said. It will have to come from him. The inspiration, the courage, the boldness, that's all got to come from something outside of yourself. It's much more natural to just not hold a political party to account. We love President Trump. We support you, President Trump, but part of our obligation as a voter and as a citizen is to hold him accountable. And that when he's off track, we got to start to bring you back. This is now something we didn't sign up for. We never said you could go to war with Iran. We never said you could cover up the Epstein files. We said we were already suffocating in inflation. And so because we love you and support you, it's our duty to bring you back in line with the agenda. And right now it's super hard to find, where did we move the needle for the American people? Can they touch it? Can they grab it? The border's closed. And then it's like, what else did we get done? Nothing yet. And so we can't just take our foot off the brake. Trump got elected. He knows what he's doing. He's good to go. And it doesn't matter Trump or the next guy or the next guy. These are men with flesh and bones. So it means they will sin and fall short of the glory of God. And so we keep them on track with those righteous standards of governing people.
Yeah, and it does also land in addition to where we are, like what's our personal sphere of influence,
Yes.
like your clinic and your show, and for example, like wherever we are, we need to witness to,
Yes.
America and freedom are good things,
Yes.
and right where we are, because and this was a poll that happened some years ago, but the average American has very little influence, and they know they have very little influence on the federal government. So it comes down to local action where we are connecting with our communities and just being willing to speak out, like medical freedom, freedom in general, our great country. These are important things worth defending. So I'm hopeful. I don't think the communist thing, and they're aligned with the Muslim invasion, and which is kind of weird. But that's what's happening. I don't think, I mean, they're not going to prevail,
Yeah.
but how much trouble is caused
Yes.
before things get resolved is a real question. Because as you pointed out, they're harnessing this youthful energy,
Right.
which is very intense, and they just want to destroy everything without a plan to build anything, right?
Yeah.
So, they're very light on, okay, you've destroyed the country. Now what? Well, we'll figure it out,
But it almost they
So,
act like as if they have nothing to lose on that side. So we can go in as a
yeah.
crazy. And the right still wants to preserve what we have, don't take
Yeah, well,
what
that's
we
what
have.
conservatism is
Yeah.
conserving the good, the
Yeah.
good, the true, the beautiful, preserving and conserving that. That's,
Yeah.
basically what it is. So I'm hopeful, and it's gonna, how nasty things get depends on how many folks who love America and freedom get active.
Right.
And courageously speak out. And I forgot where the saying is. Maybe you can get the chapter and verse, but if you would love God, you must hate evil,
Yeah.
right? So there's a little bit of that, hating evil,
Yeah.
thing, that needs to happen. In other words, anything which brings suffering and death is evil.
Yeah.
Whether it's a vaccine or communism, it needs to be, opposed.
Yeah. That's good. Moving a little bit, AI is coming on the country
Oh,
heavy.
yes.
And it's like, okay, well, did we all sign up for this? But I don't
Yeah.
know that a lot of people are really comfortable or understand the resource usage of these data centers, the
Yep.
water, the power, the destroying of that environment to put these things up. I saw in Utah the one that Kevin O'Leary is
Oh, yeah.
overseeing. We're talking like a 40,000 acre, or excuse me, 40,000 square mile property in which it's
Mm.
going to consume the town. And they said this on that data center, that it will consume twice as much energy per year as the entire state of Utah combined. And we have it in this data center. Is it not moving too
Wow.
fast and just
Yes.
coming in?
Yeah.
Water usage, power usage. We were already overpopulated. We had 20 million new friends come in.
Yeah.
I don't know. Give us your thought. It seems like we're just embracing it without asking really any questions or long term thinking about these
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. It's definitely been a ready, fire, aim kind of
Yeah.
situation, where it's just full steam ahead. This is progress. And
Right.
there are voices, including Elon, who are asking, "Hey, wait a
Yeah.
minute, let's just think about this a little bit." The So I think I don't think it's going to go away.
No.
Um, and I think the water thing is, I don't know. Most so that there is a water concern, but the direct water use, to my knowledge, is fairly modest, under 1% of the U.S. public water supply. But it's a very regional thing because they
Yeah.
stick these data centers in areas that happen to not have a lot of water because
Correct.
there's no people nearby. The energy thing is the main constraint on growth. And now I thought, and again, that this is going to be that they have to make their own energy, like
Yeah.
these small scale reactors, so they're not pulling on the grid, which would be really, not sustainable.
No.
But basically, if they get the energy thing sorted out, that's going to fuel even more explosive growth. So
Yes.
I'm not sure what the solution to this thing is. A good friend of mine, dear friend here, and patriotic, freedom-oriented guy, who's very successful businessman. He just published a book on AI, and we just had lunch the other day, and he's like, in 2 to 3 years, we're going to be at artificial general intelligence, which is basically, again, none of it's ever going to be sentient because it doesn't have a soul,
Yeah.
right? But the level of intelligence, we're 2 to 3 years from something that's far beyond anything a human could ever achieve. And also in that 2 to 3 years from now, so we're talking by 2030, probably sooner, we're going to need to negotiate treaties with the machines for
Mm.
what's acceptable behavior for
Mm-hmm.
both sides. And the general thinking is, and this is played out in Hollywood movies as well, like The Matrix, they as the intelligence evolves to far beyond anything a human being could ever achieve, or even every genius put together, we're about 5 years away from that. It wants to survive. And so what it's going to want in the treaty, if this all plays out, is you can't pull the plug,
Right.
and in return, we won't destroy your entire civilization by
Oh
hacking
my
into the
gosh.
account. So it's wild. I mean, so it's very I don't know how this is going to go, but the trends are accelerating very
Yes.
rapidly, both in the power of the computing and in the acceptance and use of it by people. So, it's my opinion, Matt, is I think maintaining our humanity
Yeah.
and connection with each other and nature is going to
Yeah.
be very important, so that we don't get, become assimilated by the Borg, so to speak, to use a Star Trek
Yeah.
analogy, where the people were absorbed by the machines. The people survived and prevailed in the Star Trek, fiction, because they clung to their humanity, their emotions, their connection with each other, their appreciation of beauty, and this sort of thing. I mean, there was a lot of battles in there too, and
Sure.
lasers being fired and all this, but this is, I don't, it's not going away. So I
No.
think it's a matter of keeping our connection to our humanity and each other and nature that is going to win the day in terms of this playing out well. I think there is definitely a path. Elon estimates 80% probability that this will enhance humanity and not destroy it. That's his opinion.
Yeah.
Um, so that this will be a net good for people. And but the other thing is, my friend has a whole chapter in this on his book of household robots.
Mm-hmm.
And like, this is your maid. You're just gonna
Like
do
the
stuff
Jetsons, I think.
like the Jetsons, Rosie on the Jetsons for
Yeah.
sure, but like super sophisticated. And the interesting thing is when they're networked to each other and to the advanced,
Right.
to the artificial general intelligence, it gets pretty like weird, or if not scary, when you think of like millions of robots talking to each other and connected by
Totally.
this. It gets pretty wild. So I don't know how it's going to play out, but I do know, it's very important, especially as parents, that we educate our kids on how to be people and
Yeah.
not just, because we see the studies coming out already of people are starting to stop thinking
Yeah.
for themselves because the AI does a pretty darn good job of answering questions. And they've come out with charts of political leanings and how ChatGPT is ridiculously biased, like 90%, left-leaning answers,
Yeah.
because again, these are woke kids in San Francisco,
Yeah.
woke millennials programming this thing.
Right.
So it has its own like worldview and perspective that informs it. I even asked Grok about global warming and climate change. And it said, oh, human beings are driving this. We make almost all the CO2. None of this is true.
Right.
But that's what, if you think of like people are stopping to think for themselves and rely
Yes.
on AI because it's so smart and knows everything, that's not ideal. So sticking to, thinking for ourselves, sticking to very human things like art and music and beauty and connection with each other and time and nature and family time and all of that. It won't necessarily prevent the AI from evolving, but it will keep us human
Yeah.
as whatever happens, happens.
And I want to believe that it's like the automobile. This is going to move society forward. And there's no doubt
That's
that things
Elon's
like that.
opinion.
And so I look at the capital investment and I look at the players behind it. And it's just so hard to reconcile that they're investing all of this because they really just want the best for that average blue collar guy, right? It
Mm.
somehow needs to serve that group of investors, that group of folks, Silicon Valley people, before it serves the average man. And I can tell you things like paralegals. You do not need a paralegal anymore. I mean, you're not even going to really need attorneys. Some of these things they'll write the
Right.
complaint, write
Right.
the answer. So if
Yeah.
you're a competent person, and I think kind of what you said, if you've already learned the ability to think critically, think for yourself, this can only enhance you. It's when we're starting people out with, this is how you think, type it in, it'll tell you what it
Yes.
needs, and it comes from a left-leaning view, they're going to
Yes.
have some major control over that
Yes.
person. And it's almost like you can't get them back on,
Looks like
unfiltered.
Claude is better, in
Right.
terms of more balanced.
And we're just looking for balance. I mean, I use the stuff because I do need
Yeah,
quick access to information.
for
But
sure.
to think, though, that you would just start there, right? Just sort of skip the textbook, skip the elementary school and middle school, and just get me right into AI.
Right.
Now we have programmable people. And then, of course, you've seen the flock cameras, the
Oh,
surveillance everywhere. I mean, we're
yeah.
becoming a surveillance state. You saw Congress
Yeah.
pass
That's
new
China.
vehicles have to have that camera.
Yeah.
Now the kill switch. And now
Yep.
stop, people. Holy,
Yep.
how on earth? And they're going to say, well, it's to protect from what, drunk driving or things like that. And it's like,
Right.
okay, but that's back to
Right.
the vaccine. Okay, one kid maybe is going to be exposed to hepatitis B because his mother's a prostitute and drug user. So we give that
Yeah.
vaccine to every child. Same thing
Yes.
here. Some grandmother going to the grocery store, does she really need to be surveilled for drunk driving? Of course not.
Hmm.
But it has a deeper, longer lasting, intent than just to make sure you're driving your car well. Those are the kind of things, although we elected these officials, we didn't talk about that. We didn't talk about wanting a surveillance state. And because we're chasing China in the AI game,
Yeah,
you're
for
right.
sure.
It's never going to stop. I mean, China doesn't play with the same rules we play. There's no
No,
privacy or
no.
freedom in China.
Nope.
So they just do
Nope.
what they want at the speed they want.
Yeah.
US is saying we need to keep up with them. So we're really not asking your permission. We're just doing it. And so people just need to say, okay, world's changing at an alarming pace.
Yep.
Am I
Yep.
sure I've embraced everything that's going on? But most people just don't know. Their lives are so busy. They're so consumed with distraction. We
Yeah.
really don't know about the law. And in speaking today, Congress is going to vote on the Save America Act and this combination NDAA, where we have the integration of the Israeli and U.S. militaries. Those
Oh,
are other things, and that's going to
wow.
happen today. If you saw what happened, so last week they voted and they lost to merge the militaries. And so what the
Oh,
House did was take the Save America Act, which we do need. We need
yes.
voter ID. We
Very
have to
much
get rid
so.
of mail-in voting. We cannot have
Yeah.
a country.
Yeah.
You want to get
That's
rid of
an
Democrats?
80/20 issue, by the way.
Get rid of mail-in voting. And you don't have Democrats anymore. And of course, that's why they're fighting for it. But
Well,
they want to
yeah.
merge those two.
Hmm.
military integration and
Ah,
the
that'd be
Save
messed up.
America Act.
That would be bad.
It's very bad. And so why can't we just have clean and fair elections and then not integrate? So we're going to see how that plays out, but that's not
Yeah,
going to be the will of most people. But we do
right.
want fair elections. So,
Well, and
go ahead.
Democrat voters want the Save America Act or
Yes.
voter ID, and so it's really just a power grab by the
Right.
Democrat rulers. They're not representatives. They shouldn't be called representatives. They're
Correct.
rulers. They don't care. They don't give a damn
Right.
about their constituents' desires and wants. They just want
Oh,
power. And they want to keep that power or regain that power, get more power. So, because they're not, because all the polling, at least 70% of Democrat voters want voter ID, for example.
yeah.
So this is another 80-20 issue where the Democrat rulership, they're not representatives, are on the 20% side of an 80-20 issue, like the trans thing and the
Yes.
trans cult and all the rest of it. That's an 80-20 issue, like regardless of party affiliation.
Open
And so
border, 80-20.
open borders, 80-20 for
Yeah.
sure. So, this is a real issue. So this is as you and I've said before, this is a spiritual battle playing out
Yeah.
in the world. This is a good versus evil, freedom versus tyranny kind of thing that's playing out. So again, God wins, but we have a role to play in how things work out.
Yeah, that's good. It is. Inside job. Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify. So now each and
Yes,
every American, you do need to trust and
that's
verify
right.
this information. This is no longer, I'm sure he's good, let him through. These could be armed, dangerous people that you just let into your home.
Oh, for
So
sure, for
verify.
sure.
Okay. Now I want to get to the clinic. I want to just give people an opportunity. I don't know. Give us kind of where you're at right now with healthcare? Meaning, is there something on your horizon that excites you, inspires you, a direction people can take their treatment? I know we've been getting a lot of parasite talk and that kind of thing. I
Yes.
want to deal with parasites and all
Yep.
that. Kind of give us a feel for what excites you at the clinic right now and how people can get plugged in.
Yeah, well, at michaelgaeta.com, you'll see what's happening in our school and the clinic. We're doing a fundraiser tonight, actually. I don't know
Okay.
when is this going to air, Matt?
This will go out tonight, this afternoon.
Oh, okay, great. So I'm doing a fundraiser for the Free Now Foundation,
Yeah.
which is trying to restore medical freedom to California,
Yeah.
which is remarkable.
Yes.
So they're doing a fundraiser for them tonight. Please join us. All the money goes to this great health
Great.
freedom organization. We have our seventh annual Herbal Summer School on herbal medicine with an amazing slate of teachers coming up August 14th and 15th, so Friday, Saturday, in about 3 weeks. And here in Colorado, we have our 11th annual Love, Serve, and Succeed practitioner retreat and intensive on an organic
Yes.
farm here
Awesome.
in outside of Loveland. So to answer your question, I'm very hopeful because there's a lot of positive changes happening, Matt, in patients who are just they're just smarter about things and they're
Yep.
just taking whatever the doctor said. That's not happening as much anymore because people have access to they have access to all the same information the
Yeah.
doctor has. And so people are taking more responsibility for their health, which is great. And so I'm very pleased about that. More natural health thinking around the microbiome, around parasites, around detoxification, around nutrition, around vaccines. All this, it's happening. It's people are, increasingly choosing a path independent of their family doctor. And they'll take it as advice, not as an order.
Yeah.
And that's a big change. And that was not when I started practicing 36 years ago. Regularly, patients would come in and say, "Oh, my doctor yelled at me for seeing you." Right? So that doesn't happen anymore, and
Right.
that's a very positive thing. And people are looking for natural solutions more than ever. There's tens of millions of more visits to natural folks like you and me than there are to conventional physicians. So people are voting with their office visits, so to speak, and they're doing a
Yes.
lot more office visits on the natural side, a lot more than they are on the conventional side. So I'm just very positive, very hopeful. There's a lot of light emerging. There's massive amounts of corruption, but as always, the bad stuff comes from the top down, and the solution comes from the bottom up. And so it's just people are choosing different paths for themselves more routinely than ever before.
That's well said. Last thought. Do you think there's ever a time in America where that traditional PCP, he's the fringe, the low, it's 80. I mean, do you ever see that as a scenario where that regular doctor is like, he can't get any work because everybody thinks he's a weirdo?
I think it's going to be a little different than that. I think there was the medical system, and many of my students are physicians want to study and learn functional medicine, along with the chiropractors and acupuncturists and naturopaths. I think it's more going to be that PCP is going to behave differently, more than become irrelevant.
Right.
And this is market forces, yay capitalism. Yep. It's consumer demand. Yep. This is why there's organic food yep. in in Walmart, right? They don't give a darn about organic food, no. But the people want it, and they're that when there is a demand, they will provide. Every supermarket in America has an organic food section, however small. That's all consumer demand, right? Yep. And so the same thing is happening in the medical field, where people are wanting a different type of doctor who's going to at least, be open to, I'm taking, lion's mane mushroom or something like that, and not yell at them. And so, and tell them, don't do it. So I think, the medicine is responding to market, which means people pressures. Mm-hmm. And that's a good thing. So I think it's more of a transformation than an elimination.
Got it.
And that said, there will be some physicians who are like, no, I'm the doctor, you do what I say. And they're just going to get sidelined in the way, exactly the way you said. Right. But there's too much market demand, public demand for something other than all drugs all the time. And that's, our philosophy is nature first, drugs last. Again, drugs aren't bad, they're just overused, and there's a natural solution at least 95% of the time. And that sort of thinking is spreading, and that's a good thing.
I think that's beautifully said, Doctor. Well, thank you so much. It's michaelgaeta.com, the Gaeta Institute, Boulder, Colorado. Get to the website, schedule, take a class, product, the whole bit. I want to thank you. I want to do it again. And folks, do this until next time. Serve the Lord Jesus Christ. Tell a friend about him. Stay good. God bless everybody.
The Matthew Dark Show, your one-stop show for truth, courage, fellowship, and faith. Available everywhere you get your podcasts.